Hello, Booktube. Once upon a time there was peace in our little corner of Booktube, and the OGBG was doing what God created it to do. The Old Geezers book group was selling out auditoriums and filling the pages of Teen Beat with quizzes and pull-out posters. And all of you were having your debates about who was the cute one, and who was the sensitive one, who was the sexy one, and who was the smart one. And the four core members of the OGBG, Todd at Todd's Bursting Bookcase, Jason at Byways at Bookland, Mark at Richardson Reads, and yours truly, were just burbling about books in our undeniably sexy octogenarian way. And then, gradually, a darkness crept into the proceedings. Gradually, a duchy here, a province there. Passive aggression started to rear its ugly head, until finally, things were brought to a violent tempest by the two members of the OGBG with Irish surnames. Not that there's any connection at all. Knee-jerk belligerence is hardly what we think of when we think of the Irish. Am I right? Jason Harrigan and I started a kind of bookish Cold War, an arms race, a missile gap. One book haul causing another book haul, causing another book haul. Bigger and less sustainable all the time, and all the ranks of the rest of our little corner of Booktube who had been idly daydreaming about us on their bedspreads when they should have been doing their homework were suddenly wide-eyed with fear, because the tussle-headed titans of the OGBG were suddenly fighting amongst themselves. But such warfare takes a toll. It's hard, even on its participants, and eventually Jason Harrigan put out the olive branch for a détente, and I gratefully accepted it. And it looked as if peace was going to resume in the ranks of the OGBG, but no! No! Suddenly a musket shot was heard from behind a 300-year-old Vermont stone wall. Suddenly, Mark Richardson re-entered the fray with a mail haul designed to stir up the you-know-what, and before the dust had even settled, Todd was back in the fracas as well, with a book haul of his own. And now there's chaos in the OGBG. Now, who knows what the next generation of the OGBG will inherit from the ruins that we leave behind. And as a result, I have a mail haul, a book haul for you today. It's not really a result of that, because I had to be a couple of blocks away from the Brattle bookshop here in Boston anyway this morning, first thing, bitterly. By the time I was done, the Brattle was open, at least they'd been open for a few minutes. So I walked up and went in. For those of you who are new to the channel, the Brattle is a great used bookstore in the heart of Boston, with a high turnover rate, so that if you make the circuit of the 3 floors of the building and give it time and look at everything and make your purchases and go, if you come back a few days later, a week later, a lot will be different. And that's just inside the store. Next to the store is a lot full of carts and shelves, thousands more books that are on sale, that are $1, $3, or $5 books. All kinds of descriptions, all types of shapes, all subject matters, nothing arranged in any way. You just have to sort of prowl through them all. But the payoff for prowling through them all is that you can walk away with a bag load of books for $20. That's not bad at all. And I spent some time in the outdoor lot this morning. Today is probably going to get fairly hot. Tomorrow is going to get nice and hot, 90s Fahrenheit. But all of it has a melancholy cast to it, because it looks to me like the temperatures are going to drop down into the 70s after that, after tomorrow. It looks to me like the temperatures are going to drop down into the 70s and pretty much stay that way. So no more glorious warmth in the middle of the day, no more 90 degrees, which I'm learning is pretty much the bare minimum for what I need to be comfortable. Instead, it'll be down in the 70s, and who knows how chilly it'll be at night. And of course, Boston has no grounds to complain about the weather, with two tropical storms bearing down on the Texas Gulf Coast at the same time. 2 storms at the same time. They germinated in slightly different places. They are converging, and they are going to hit the same city block at the same time. It looks like. Unbelievable. So I'm not genuinely complaining, but when I went to the Brattle this morning, it was still nice and cool, and there was nobody there. So I just browsed to my heart's content, and I've got a bunch of books that I want to show you. I don't know if this is furthering the bookish missile war among the OGBG, or if maybe we can calm the waters. Maybe this will be enough for now. I'm not really sure of the elements involved. Todd is busy training in order to chase his dream to Nashville, and Jason is worried that his part of Ireland may be headed towards another lockdown, which is a feature. It's kind of a rolling, recurring feature that I think we're all going to have to worry about. Is just that your municipality will decide that lockdown measures are back in effect, or if they aren't already. I was out and about today, and I lost track. I thought I will count, and I lost track of how many people in the downtown Boston area I saw who weren't wearing masks. I lost track. It wasn't so. We're not talking 10. We're not talking 20 or 30. It was many more than that. And the logic here is completely straightforward. It's a straight line. There's no deviation at all. If people wear masks, incidences of this virus go down. If they don't, incidences go up. And my admittedly small non-scientific sample today leads me to believe that most people in Boston, in the greater Boston area, are not wearing masks anymore. And that is what is going to have only one effect. There's only one effect that has. It's not like you get a pass this time, even though you're doing what you shouldn't. No, it's that if a lot of people stop wearing masks, the infection rate goes up. Hospitalization rate goes up. Death rates go up. Simple as that. So I might be looking at one of those resumptions of lockdown myself, but I'm not right now. And of course, Mark Richardson has a job. He has an actual important 9-to-5 daily job. So who knows what the state of the OGBG shooting war will be this week. But for now, I have books that I would have gotten anyway. I always say that these OGBG Missile Gap book hauls were done with vengeance in my heart, but actually I would have got these things anyway. I have a good group of books here. And we're going to start and end with nostalgia. But not just nostalgia, not empty nostalgia. I wouldn't do that because I'm surrounded by books. I'm drowning in books here. So I wouldn't get a book just for nostalgia. But I think it's a legitimate active element in getting a book is if you see an edition of something or a particular book that in addition to being a book that you want, in addition to being a book that you actually like, is also a nostalgic thing. And I found a bunch of those today. The first is a batch. We'll do 3 in a row. These are mass market paperbacks, mass market science fiction paperbacks that are nostalgic for me because I love them. I love these books as these mass markets, not just any mass market, but these editions when they first came out. The first one is something that I've mentioned on this channel before. I've recommended it enormously. I recommend it enormously. It is not currently in print as far as I know. As far as I know, it has never been reprinted aside from this mass market. So it's had this mass market, and then the mass market paperback got reprinted a few times, especially as it started to rack up awards. You had to change the cover just a bit and put that on the cover. And there was a science fiction book club edition that combined this with 2 other books, but no subsequent trade paperback, as far as I know, no commemorative hardcover, no nothing like that, even though this is one of the greatest science fiction novels in the canon. And this is Startide Rising by David Brin. A classic 1980s style cover, right? This would have been, 1983. This paperback is inscribed and signed. And this one comes with a plastic sheath around it, so the paperback underneath is in perfect condition. And this copy of Startide Rising was the first. I don't have any idea how to tell whether or not this is the first edition. I am not Todd or Sean or Mark or Jason. But I know that this is early because it doesn't have any mention of any of those awards. This is what the original paperback looked like. The one that I had. The one that I found at a metal spinner rack in a drugstore. I thought, oh, well, that looks interesting. It's a water world. Or a dolphin wearing an exoskeleton of some kind. I'll give it a try. I've never heard of David Brin before. Hadn't read Sundiver, his first book. I had to go back and read that. And I was blown away by this. It's the story of a beleaguered starship with a crew composed of humans, dolphins, and a chimpanzee the dolphins and the chimpanzee have been uplifted. They have been genetically modified a bit so that they are more intelligent, better with their hands, better at spatial concepts, so that they can be crew members along with the humans. In fact, the captain of the ship is a dolphin, Captain Kreidecke. And they are running from the massively powerful galactic societies that run the whole of their arm of the galaxy, because they have made an archaeological discovery. They have discovered a mummy that very well could upset the whole order of the known galaxy. And they're being hunted for that reason, and they're running through, relativistic space-time jumps and whatnot. They come to a planet that is a water world. The water is heavy metal, so it's not safe for humans or dolphins to swim in for any length of time, but it will give them the time they need to effect repairs and maybe come up with a way out of this whole mess. And it's a whole world. I mean, David Rinn went on to write about the Uplift saga. He went on to write in this world many, many times. And Sundiver, his earlier book, takes place in an earlier version of this world. But this was my first encounter with any of it, and it's just amazing. Just amazing. Don't understand the neglect that's going on here with this book. But then again, I don't understand the neglect that science fiction and fantasy generally do with their progenitors. I don't usually get that. This next one is something, again, I have another version of this. But I found this with this Darrell K. Sweet cover, and this is the version that I read and loved. This is Elsprague de Camp, Lest Darkness Fall, in which a modern day man, they have the Darrell K. Sweet cover. There's a man in a suit and tie constructing a trebuchet. And Martin Padway is an archaeologist, and he finds himself suddenly transported 1,400 years into the past. And this is a sign. It's very good. It's very funny. There's a good ongoing bit with his Viking bodyguard, who's never happy. He's a gloomy Viking bodyguard. But the heart of this book is that the woolly old science fiction idea of what would happen if you went back into the past with all your knowledge about the present. How much of an effect could you have on the world? Of course, the answer to that would be you'd have virtually no effect whatsoever. But especially if you went back 1,400 years, if you went back a long way, then you'd have, arguably, if you transported it from 2020 to 1920, you might be able to have a big effect, at least on yourself. But in reality, no. But anyway, Martin Padway is an archaeologist. He also has an engineering bent, and he knows all kinds of things that none of the people in the past know. He knows all kinds of engineering principles and whatnot. And this is an exploration of that idea. What kind of an effect, what kind of a change could someone using their present-day knowledge have if they went back into the past? And it's a hoot. I just love it. And this is the old Del Rey paperback with this is the way it came out. It isn't a paperback version of something that came out as a $30 hardcover. It just came out like this. And you just bought it like this. and you took a chance on it like this. This was what? $1.95. And then the third science fiction thing here is also something that this is also the 1980s, yes? Okay, well, it was originally published in 1979, but this edition came out in 1980. And this is On Wings of Song by Thomas Dish. There is the main character, Daniel, flying over the fields of Iowa. A large part of this book takes place in a dystopian future in what Dish calls the Free State of Iowa. And this is a world in totalitarian lockdown. I have a feeling that On Wings of Song is going to be really disturbing to read in 2020. Because Dish was no great prose stylist. Don't listen to anyone who tells you otherwise. His science fiction novels are not all that well written. But he was a great sort of gadfly social commentator, an acid political commentator, and a really good prognosticator. Science fiction, he mapped out futures that didn't really have much to do with whiz-bang technology or aliens invading, but rather how would society change. And if memory serves, it's been 30 years since I read this book, but if memory serves, some of his predictions came true in 2016, and have only gotten worse, only gotten more spot on since then. But part of the book involves people who fly. Not like this, not literally bodily, but that is still a great cover. That's what drew me to this book. I saw this again on a metal spinner rack, and it was what did you cost? $2.25, and I grabbed it. I grabbed all of these things just because they looked good. They looked and sounded interesting, and it wasn't a question of taking a gamble on a $35 hardcover. It was nothing. This meant I went without lunch. That's all. These are three terrific science fiction books, so I'm going to give all three of them a reread in the short order soon, probably before September. And I'm going to do it in these versions, which has an appeal all its own. It shouldn't. And if there were ebooks of any of these things, I'd be the first person in line for them, because ebooks make more sense. They are entirely more sensible. They are on your device. They are they don't require shelf space. They can be infinitely annotated. They are extremely comfortable to read. In bed at night, I can just prop my iPad on and I can do anything I want with the thing holding my hand or resting against the bean if she's laying on my belly. So there's none of the awkwardness of needing to turn a page of a book and having it snap shut or fly out of your hands or whatever. None of that at all. I would gladly take ebooks of these things, but that doesn't mean I would give up these, because these are the forms I found these in, and that had a real charm to it when I saw them today. And then these next two are mass markets as well, and they follow a trend that I've been doing in 2020. I guess it's not going anywhere, because 2020 is slowly winding down, and I'm still heavy in the grip of it. And that is murder mysteries, thrillers, that sort of thing. I'm expanding. I'm reading as much as I can, especially of older stuff, and expanding to see who I like and who I don't like. I found one of each today. I found a thriller and a murder mystery that I'm interested in both of them. The thriller is from, I want to say the 1970s, 1973, and it's by the late Joseph Dimona, and it is Last Man at Arlington. How's that for a nice 70s cover? and from what I gather from the admittedly very thin plot description on the back, this takes place 10 years after the Kennedy assassination, when someone is finishing the job. Someone is killing people who have some connection with the Kennedy assassination in Dealey Plaza. Never read this. I think that it did really well for the author, but I don't think I've ever even held a copy of it in my hand. So, and this author's, of course, completely gone. So it'll be interesting to see what he makes of it. And then this next one is the author who wrote under the name Edmund Crispin. This is Buried for Pleasure, with a really, really dorky cover. But this satisfies the sweet tooth of English country village murder mysteries. That's what this is. Murder stalks the countryside as poisoned chocolates and other grisly means of disposal shatter the tranquility of sleepy English hamlet of Sandford Angelorum. For the imperturbable Gervase Fenn, professor of English at Oxford, these distressing developments provide just one more distraction from the prime business at hand, standing for Parliament as the local independent candidate. Fenn must play the sleuth while campaigning and contend with a bizarre collection of dim-witted rustics, buxom barmaids, oily politicos, eccentric clergymen, love-struck couples, and an escaped lunatic in order to solve the mystery in this witty and entertaining satire. This author has a life that deserves a book of its own. There's probably been a biography of Edmund Crispin. That was a pen name. But he was a writer, a friend to all the literary greats, a composer. There ought to be a new biography. Maybe there is in England. I don't think you could even sell a biography like that in America. And I'm pretty sure that Edmund Crispin is entirely out of print. All these murder mysteries, I'm pretty sure they're entirely out of print. We shall see. It doesn't matter to me, because I'm gobbling these things up. I'm not getting just whole basket loads of them. I'm trying to be a little selective rather than overdo it. But I am learning a lot. And it's I could partially write it off as a business expense, because I am slowly trying to educate myself not only in what is out there to read in terms of police procedurals or thrillers or just ordinary hyper-plotted English murder mysteries, but also how to write them. My last two NaNoWriMo projects have been stuttering attempts at learning how to write a murder mystery. And I'm still undecided about whether or not my main project for NaNoWriMo in November will be a murder mystery. I'm still not sure about that. This next one is a Penguin. It's a Penguin Deluxe. I saw it. It was all these things were dirt cheap, so I just waited until I had an armload. It's a neat thing about the Brattle sale lot is that you don't have to. Excuse me. You don't have to police yourself in terms of money when you're at the Brattle bookshop. You really, for me, I just stop when I have an armload of books. When I have as many as I can carry, that's when I stop, because it's going to be almost no money anyway. And this is a Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. I saw it and grabbed it right away because I could not, off the top of my head, remember if I still have a copy of this. This is the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of Candide. Isn't that a lovely thing? Got the deckled edges here and the French flaps with cast of characters and artwork on the insides. And it's a little bit dingy, just a little. A warm cloth will bring the colors right out on the white here. The white here this has obviously been in somebody's dorm room for a while. I can fix that. I can make this nice and bright, and I do like Candide a little. I'm happy that it is universally taught in schools. I'm happy that it's not going anywhere. I think that the comedy is a little easy, but then I think most comedy is a little easy. And I don't remember if I have a copy of this. If I do, well, then I've got a double. If I don't, then great. I've found an addition to that wall, which is something. Not a lot of the books that I got today will probably come into this room, which is the ultimate goal of used book shopping. There is no real section in this room, aside from the Penguin Classics. There is no real section in this room for mass market paperbacks. There used to be. I used to have a bookcase full of mass market paperbacks, but they're not anymore. Then his next one was I believe a kind of in-house production. I'm not sure how commercially available this was. This is by Charles Madison, and it is The Owl Among Colophons. And this was done in 1966 as a 100-year anniversary celebration of Henry Holt, the publisher, and also Henry Holt the person. And Henry Holt the person was, no pun intended, a hoot. He was unfailingly funny and energetic in correspondence, and there was a mountain of correspondences. And I don't think I've ever read this book. This book, I believe, will just draw heavily, shamelessly, on all of that correspondence, because Holt could write amazingly interestingly about every aspect of publishing, from the money to coddling authors to publishing houses bidding on some hot new book to the presentation in stores to everything, just everything. He wrote, if I remember correctly, he actually wrote a memoir when he was bitterly old. This is not that. This is a sort of an in-house centennial history of the house that he built. It'll have a lot of biographical detail about him. But he also wrote a memoir. I feel almost positive about that. I think I read it, but not my own copy. I think I read it as a copy from a very old library. If he did, I think he wrote a memoir. I can almost remember the name of it. I think the word garrulous was in the title, or garrulities, the garrulities of an old editor, or something like that. It was utterly delightful. Utterly delightful. It was pure distilled Henry Holt. What I wouldn't give to find a copy of that thing. It's probably cost $500. But this will do just fine. This will quote liberally from Henry Holt. You don't write about him without quoting from him. And it may end up in here. I do have a couple of bookcases that are devoted to publishing essays, prefaces, introductions, reviews, that sort of thing. It might, depending on how enjoyable it is. Then this next one, I know that it is enjoyable. It is incredibly good. But I don't know if it will come in here. I'm not 100% sure. It's a novel. It's a World War II novel about an attack cruiser called the Belinda. It's an attack transport called the Belinda in the Pacific Theater. This is Kenneth Dodson's great book, Away All Boats. This is an old copy. Has the maps that Dodson gives you. He gives you the chart of where the Belinda goes. But this was from 1954. And again, that is when, if I remember correctly, that is when this book was published. But again, I'm not 100% sure if this is the first edition. I don't care either. Unlike my brethren in the OGBG, I'm sort of indifferent to the provenance or value of books as objects. They have to have sentimental value for me to care. And the thing that I notice about this thing is that it's in perfect condition, and somebody, whether it's at the Brattle or the previous owner, thought to wrap it in this plastic covering so that it's not... I have seen this book in used bookstores and at flea markets and whatnot, looking just terrible, just battered all to hell and gone. The reason for that is because it's so readable. Dodson fills the Belinda with a crew of neophytes at the beginning of their story and then has them experience the war together. Along those lines, it's very similar to The Cruel Sea by Nicholas Montserrat, and to a handful of other nautical World War II novels that were written straight from the war. So contemporary with the war, usually written by people who served. Dodson served. It's a long time merchant marine guy. There's a handful of books like that that are well worth studying. They ought to be. Somebody ought to buy the rights to them and reissue them as a uniform set. What a thing that would be. World War II at sea in fiction. What a thing that would be. Some of those novels are toweringly good. And this is one of them. I was very happy to find this. This is one of them. So Away All Boats is... I haven't read this in 50 years, so I'll gladly give it another try. I haven't read it in 50 years, and yet, much like The Cruel Sea, which, you might forget the page-by-page details of The Cruel Sea, but there are a couple of scenes in that novel that you will never forget. And the same thing is true with Away All Boats. I might remember... I might forget who had what sweetheart on shore or what adventure is coming next as you turn the pages. But there are 2 or 3 scenes in this book that I remember vividly. I remember exactly the effect they had on me when I read them the first time. So, and then we have some history, of course. A trip to the Brattle would be nothing without history. This first one is from, I want to say the 1990s. I read it and loved it, and then got rid of it and never thought of it again. Yeah, 1998. And I loved it. I don't know why I got rid of it. I must have maybe an apartment move or a Brattle sale where it got lumped in, or maybe at the moment I thought no. If you write, somebody goes to the bother of writing an original and charming work of history that's this good, then I want to keep it. This is by Barbara Crossett, and it's The Great Hill Stations of Asia. And there you have one of them on the cover. These were all over the place. Korea, Vietnam, of course India, all through India. Settlements, houses, greenery, lawns, tea gardens, that sort of thing, that were built by European people who were in Asia for, business with the East India Company or wherever, whatever the reason was for being there. They realized that when you're in the valleys and on the plain in most of Asia in high summer, you're going to go insane if you're not raised to it. It's a level of heat and humidity that beggars description. And those people sought the relief of the hills, any hills nearby, where the tops are going to be much cooler. It's entirely in many of the hill stations in India, while everyone is baking in misery down on the plain, it's snowing on the roofs of your hill station. So European people, moved up to these hill stations and used them, and that they called them hill stations. They were really just communities, encampments, that sort of thing. And they used them for decades and decades and decades, and now they are resorts. Now they're still in use. You can still go. You can still do... In fact, I think that in some parts of India there are hill station tours that you can take. But this book is just terrific. It takes you through a lot of the famous ones, gives you great prefacing black and white photos of them at either in their heyday or in ruin, and the author tells all the stories that are connected with them, all the history that's connected with that hill station. Just amazing. I read it and loved it. I recommended it to so many people back in the 1990s. I have no idea why I didn't keep it. And as is the case with a lot of books like that, it slips through your fingers, and you just have to be lucky to encounter it again. So when I saw it, I grabbed it because I want to keep it. This next one is it's a book in a trilogy, and the more I think about it, the more I really like the trilogy. I just read and reviewed the third finishing book, and realized that I didn't have all of the older ones except as ebooks. And I'm happy to have them as ebooks. But I also want them on my shelves. I don't know if that will stay true. But this is Ian Toll's trilogy on the war in the Pacific. This trilogy just ended. This is a squat little... I don't know if you're going to be able to make it out. This is a comparatively squat hardcover. See that? It's comparatively squat. I don't know why that is. Again, I don't have the book parsing skills that my brethren in the OGBG have, so I don't know if this was some sort of book club edition. I don't know how I'd be able to tell that. It's smaller than the normal hardcover for the third book in the series, for instance, so it might be. But this is just, you know, full-blown narrative history and military history. I really, really like the trilogy, and I saw this, and I didn't remember when I saw it. I know I didn't have this volume except as an ebook, but I couldn't remember if I had remaining third volume, and I still don't know. I'm going to have to go out and look at my history shelves and figure out a way to rearrange them so that all three of them could be together. Then this next one is a big fat biography, of course. What would a trip to the Brattle be without a big fat biography? This kind of dovetails with something that Todd said in his latest video. He mentioned that that not everybody might want to dig around in all of my old videos to see the handful of videos that I made reinforcing a book. And then maybe I could make another one. This is a prime candidate. I'm going to have to reinforce this. But I never know what to make of those videos now because there are quite a few book purists on Booktube, on our little corner of Booktube now, who weren't there when I made those videos, who might consider my method... I mean, the method that I use is just used to clear plastic packing tape. It's not in any way visually appealing. It's not. It will, as many outraged purists have told me over the years, totally destroy the resale value of the book. It isn't meant to do anything except make the book completely usable for you, for your private use, for the rest of your life. And we'll do that. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd be triggering those people to make a video. But this is by Kenneth Neil Cameron, and this is Shelley, The Golden Years. His big... This thing is actually oversized. If the other one was undersized, this is oversized. This is the follow-up to his... He wrote a volume about Shelley's youth that I don't have. When I saw this at the Brattle, I looked around to see if maybe the person who got rid of this to the Brattle got rid of that as well. You can see this is in a little rough shape. I'm going to have to fix this in order to read it. But I haven't read this thing in ages. Ages and ages. This came out in the 60s, I believe. When was this published? This is... 1974. Okay, 1974. This is just an amazing Shelley biography. Just amazing. It's not as poetic or beautifully written as Shelley the Pursuit, but in terms of soup to nuts, you know, thoroughly researched life, these two volumes are unimprovable. And this is the Shelley's glory years. This is you can only do a 2-volume biography of Shelley, and this is his glory years. This is the time when he made a name, when he had his adventures, and when he died. And I remember thinking this was just biography in the grand sense. So I was amazed to find this. And these were all dirt cheap. Keep in mind, I didn't shop inside the store, so these were all dirt cheap. I will reinforce the cover on this. I have couple of other Shelley biographies, but it doesn't matter because this book, like all the really good Shelley biographies, extends beyond him. It writes about his time and all of his famous contemporaries, so it's fine by me. And then the last book that we'll do on this Brattle haul we'll go right back to nostalgia, because I had this thing when it first came out in the 1970s, I believe, 1971. I had this thing. I gobbled it up right away, eagerly, and I have almost never seen it since. So I was overjoyed to find it at the Brattle Day. This is Superman from the 1930s to the 1970s. Big hardcover reprint. I can't tell you what a joy in the 1970s it was to encounter this thing. When I loved Superman in all of his incarnations, almost all of his creators, but I never thought of connecting him with a book of any kind. He was a sloping pile of comics that were in a chest somewhere in the attic. But not a book that I could consult without fear of damaging it. DC did a number of these. They did Batman from the 30s to the 70s. I think they did Wonder Woman from the 30s to the 70s, and also Captain Marvel from the 30s to the 70s. I believe. I have never seen the Wonder Woman or Captain Marvel volumes. Never. The Batman volume I actually have. I actually have it here somewhere. I think it's in the darkest depths of Mordor. And I've almost never seen the Superman volume. And here it is. And it takes you from the... Look at that. That's the back. Nothing more than that. Just that. How wonderful is that? This takes you from the very beginning. This takes you from, I believe this starts off with Action Comics #1. Yeah, this starts off with Action Comics #1. With the very first appearance of Superman. And for probably half this book, we are dealing with a Superman who is incredibly powerful, incredibly strong, but who can't fly. Doesn't have any kind of sensory powers. He's just incredibly fast and incredibly strong. He's invulnerable, but he can't just leap into the air. That changes. You get to watch Superman change as this book goes on. You have, from 1948, you have Wayne Boring drawing an elaborate, expanded version of Superman's origin, with Jor-El, the scientist on Krypton, warning the Science Council that this planet is doomed. This planet is going to explode, and we must take steps now to save our people. All the way to, this goes all the way through, you get to the reign of Curt Swan, the great Superman artist Curt Swan, and slowly but surely, gangsters start to give way. Gangsters were the only things that Superman fought. Gangsters and the early version of Lex Luthor. Just over and over and over again. Batman too. All they fight are gangsters. Superman had to wait decades before he started to get regular, recurring villains who could give him any kind of trouble. And the one flaw that I spot in this that it bothered me at the time is that it jumps from Kurt Schaffenberger and Wayne Boring and Curt Swan. It does a huge jump to the present day of the time, to the 1970s. I guess it's just my way of saying I wish this were 10 times longer. But it takes you to Superman number 233 with the famous Neil Adams cover, where he's breaking kryptonite chains, because in this issue, a runaway radioactive chain effect renders all the kryptonite on the planet non-radioactive. So it suddenly can't hurt Superman anymore. And suddenly it removes his vulnerability. And I think this is Cary Bates who writes this. It's certainly Curt Swan who draws it, with Murray Anderson doing the inks. They have a great scene where they bring back one of those gangsters. Superman stops a gangster who has just caused an explosion, and the gangster is telling him his plans very arrogantly. Because he says, I don't have to worry about telling you this, because I got something here that's going to stop you in your tracks. A little thing called kryptonite. And in a classic comic book sequence, Superman says, maybe you don't read the papers, or maybe you can't read. But in a classic comic book sequence, Curt Swan draws Superman eating a piece of kryptonite and saying it could do with a little salt, but all in all, it tastes a little snack. And then in the next page, he says, oh, and by the way, you're under arrest. That moment deserves to be immortal. I don't think the comic book industry today makes moments like that, and I don't think they care about him, but I love that Superman eats a piece of kryptonite. So I found Superman from the 30s to the 70s. This is coming into this room. I don't think I need to reinforce it. I'll just be careful with it. It's in perfect condition. So that was your my Brattle visit, and I don't know what this visit is going to do. Is it going to make things worse in the OGBG arms race, or is it going to calm them again? I have no idea. I wasn't going to turn up visiting the Brattle anyway, so I'll tell you, I'll have to risk it. So we have Superman from the 30s to the 70s. We have Shelley the Golden Years by his definitive biographer. So that is great. In many ways, the Superman in this are the find of the day. We have Pacific Crucible by Ian Toll. We have Away All Boats, which is also the naval aspect of World War II, only told in the form of rollicking good fiction. Deeply intelligent fiction. Then we have The Owl Among Colophons, an in-house anniversary history of Henry Holt and Henry Holt Publishers. We have the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of Candide. We have the Great Hill Stations, a study of their histories, their nature, all the colorful personalities that came in and out of them over the years. And then a bunch of mass-market paperbacks. Buried for Pleasure, an English village murder. Last Man at Arlington, written from the headlines 1970s thriller. And a trio of science fiction. Startide Rising by David Brin in mass market. Lest Darkness Fall by Elsewhere de Camp in mass market. And On Wings of Song by Thomas Dish in mass market. So that was my Brattle proceeds today. A fine haul. I don't think I'm going to be getting back to the Brattle this week, so we shall see. Sorry for the length of this thing as usual. When I get a Brattle haul, I just want to talk books. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, Booktube.